May 13, 2013 to order. Any other members? Visitor and public comment section, item 4. This is the part of the meeting where the visitor and the public can speak. Please identify yourself and direct your comments.
Hi, I'm Pam Fritz. I'm president of the Clinton Taxpayers Association. I have these copies for everybody. I'd like to read a statement. I'd like you all to know that the Clinton Taxpayers Association does not like to be a proponent of defeating budgets. If you present a budget that is sound but is tight and that really reflects this difficult economic times that we are presently in, it would resonate with the taxpayers. We request that you balance the town and the school's needs with the ability and the willingness of the taxpayers to pay. The Taxpayers Association has done our research, and we know that this can clearly be accomplished. And we are going to respectfully submit our suggestions on exactly how we can do this, and I will defer to Kirk to go through the detail of that. I wanted to point out to you that from 1995 to 2009, the town and education budget passed on the first ballot. But since 2010, taxpayers are motivated to defeat budgets that would provide burdensome taxes. And you can see, looking at this chart, exactly what happened in the percentages. Of course, we know, and the incorrect vote that was presented the other evening was corrected, and you can see that the failure on the town and education budgets was full 14% and 11% respectively in both budgets. The message of these repeated and escalating referendum defeats sends to the boards of education, selectmen, and finance, we feel is very clear.
Here.
Oh, whatever. I thought it
You have for this last vote, 5/8/13 on the education budget, never mind.
Oh, and this is the correct.
Yes, correct.
number.
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
One of the reasons that homeowners and businesses are moving out of Clinton is because they can live and work in our neighboring shoreline towns and pay a lot less in the taxes. And I want you to, and I'm sure you're fully aware of this, but you fully understand what the reaction is going to be when the debt service for the new high school and mandated wastewater solutions are added to the taxpayers' tab. We sincerely believe that the only budget that the taxpayers will approve at this time, the only one will be one that will provide for a zero increase in their taxes. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
I also have a memo to pass out. Here. There we go. Sorry. And I also have, I'll pass this out, just in case you haven't seen it, I'll let you pass these around. That's the report from Mr. Curry that he presented to Jack Cross. And what I have to say is that the crisis in confidence that recent budgets has led to repeated defeats and was well founded. Even after budget defeats, led to cuts of between 150,000 and 873,000. Surpluses of 460,000 to $1 million were reduced. Any adverse impact of budget defeats were needless and punitive in the shadow of these marked surpluses. And I know the history of them. What can be done to avert another defeated budget referendum and to regain the confidence Clinton taxpayers. First, demand a credible accounting of current year spending and budget to date with a reasonable estimate of town and education surpluses with deficits. The town charter is clear. It's right here on this board. If you look at it, I don't think there's anything ambiguous in this language. I don't think you can, this is not referring to the undesignated fund. It's not referring to anything that's audited. It's an estimate. Second, apply a reasonable amount of the combined surpluses to the 2013-14 fiscal year allocated surplus. $500,000 is suggested. Third, reduce any budget lines in the 2013-14 budget that current surpluses demonstrate are fact. Fourth, correct errors and omissions in the budgeted revenues as permitted by the town charter, which you can see on the box of the following page. And I make some suggestions of things that have been budgeted in previous budgets that were not in this year's budget. And you'll see the annual budget meeting information from the charter that explains this. The Board of Education operating budget must be lower to the state's minimum budget requirement. At this point, I'd like to express my apologies to Jack Cross because I had bad information not updated when I was talking about the minimum budget requirement for public meeting, and I made some things, said some statements that were not accurate, not true. I'm not always right, but I never in doubt. For future reference, the education operating budget should never exceed the MBR unless it is absolutely necessary. Next year's operating budget becomes the following year's MBR with adjustments for declines in enrollment and changes in education cost-sharing grants. Until these surpluses, these large surpluses are run out of the education budgets, there is no need for an operating budget increase above the MBR. Also, $60,000 in additional contracted police in the revenue correction above the previous graph must be derived from the Board of Education for the school resource officer to be absorbed within the surplus as an operating expense applied under the MBR. This combination of measures is required to avert a tax increase and another defeat of the budget referendum. None of these should result in reductions in any services or jobs. Any measure taken other than these that result in cuts in operations are unnecessary and punitive. The taxpayers do not take defeating budgets lightly. The effort to do so is significant, and the collateral damage to Clinton's reputation is an unintended, regrettable consequence. The taxpayers are seeking responsible budgets and spending that are not gouging Clinton's tax base unnecessarily. Please consider taking all of these measures that are hereby thoughtfully and respectfully presented. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Vince Domino. I'd like to offer a suggestion. I believe that based on the current proposed Board of Education budget, you can remove $244,940 and get down to the MBR. But I also believe that the Board of Education is allowed to request of the State Board of Education an exception for good reason, which any municipality that has requested an exception with the MBR, to the best of my knowledge, has been approved. I would recommend a 1% reduction in the MBR, which would give, I believe, another $314,065, which would total $559,000. And I also believe that based on the budget surpluses of recent years, that the Board of Education should be able to absorb the cost of the SRO at the school, the student resource officer, the police officer, which I think your estimates run somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000, depending on what you're considering compensation. So I think that those items alone would give you over $600,000. And again, I believe that requesting a 1% decrease in MBR from the State Board of Education would be very reasonable in light of three factors. One, there have been consistent budget surpluses for the last several years. Two, the town is facing the cost of a new high school, $64 million, we all know that. And three, you've got a declining enrollment that has been continuous. Thank you.
Anyone else? Public comment? Moving on.
The last I heard on the education surplus was from your memo of $868,000. You're reporting now $348,000, of which $176,000 of the differential is for, quote, security. Which, from what I read in the minutes from the Board of Education, there was a security committee. I don't know who those people are. And there's no indication of what the expenditure for security is, because it was never presented as a capital project to the Board of Finance. In addition, there's another $344,000 being expended on Board of Education capital projects, none of which have been presented to the Board of Finance. So, could you give me a little information here, Mr. Kerr?
Did this include somewhere, did this include the reduction in capital?
Yes.
The 200,000, which was in here, and we identified that, we went
You
through
identified
project by project. So
196,700.
that's part of it.
Right,
No.
and then we have,
No, that's not part of it. You're talking about next year's budget now, $209,000.
That's right, but he
Right.
accelerated his capital
Request.
request.
Yeah, but he never presented to this board, never presented what the 100, you and he had a discussion, but we never got a line item of what it was gonna be expended upon.
Yes, it was. There were projects that were designated.
that's March, right?
Yeah, I asked, the same question that you're asking is why that went down to 348,000. Well, actually, the question I asked was, is that 348,000 net of the 200,000 in projects that we identified at our meeting? And the answer was yes, so I assumed that that was part of the decrease. And those projects, and I
And
have
if
the
that's
number
part,
here.
if that 200,000 is
Right.
part of the 344,000,
Right,
okay? We still don't have a line item indication as what that $200,000 represents, nor do we have an indication what the additional $144,000 represents, nor do we know what the $176,000 on quote security is.
I have musical instruments, tech replacement upgrades, furniture replacement, and that was half of, I mean, this is partial
Facility
to your
study
question.
was
District
$30,000.
facility study, that was the line items that we identified when we went through.
Right.
Yeah, but you were writing this down. I don't remember this going on.
Where is that?
It's his capital budget presentation,
Okay,
so that's part of it.
I'm getting senile, so maybe I don't remember everything that goes on.
Here.
What was that?
I think the selectmen asked for a $300,000 reduction.
It's in the minutes. Not all of it.
It's in the minutes, right.
I do recall we were very specific as to what the reduction was, so we tied to specific capital projects.
The amount.
Right. And I think we even asked Jackie.
Okay, so that's 200,000. Now there's another 144 and 176.
176 is security.
Because we've gone from 868, Mr. Curry's memo, to 348, which is
I also did an
$500,000.
update on the expenditures, which was 3 months after the fact, so we got a better handle on them than back in February when it was done. So all the numbers were updated in the estimate for the order.
And where were we then?
We're at
What number?
348,000.
No. The first time, the next time we came in, Jack came in and said it was $600,000 at the public hearing. Approximately, not exact.
Right.
And you did too, you said it was approximately
And then we
$600,000.
reduced an additional, the 200 for capital and the 176 that we spent on security.
capital? It was an add back.
196.70, the number he's shown here. So if you look at where we were at 600,000,
Where's the 196 then? Where is it?
That's money, that's projects that were in the next year's capital equipment budget that are being done this fiscal year from the Board of Ed.
We gave them permission for that.
Right,
That's part of the 200,000?
that is the 200,000.
That is the
196.
196.
Okay, so that drops us to what number if we give you from 600, okay, to 400,000?
Right.
And then there's 176 for security upgrades.
So that would drop us down to 200,000.
But I've also done estimates on some of the other line items and updated all those.
Okay, so what is the $176,000?
Security upgrades. I don't know.
What does that mean?
I guess the best people to ask would be the superintendent. Can you sort of define to us, please, what the upgrades in the 176 are, please?
the security committee that you referenced earlier included staff members from our tech department, maintenance and facilities, first responders, i.e. Police department, myself, Mary Ann, administrator, I'm missing somebody, and a teacher representative. We went to a security symposium together. We met several times after with first responders, and we also did a security audit of all 4 buildings. And out of that came a number of physical protection pieces that included upgrades to cameras and video for main entrances. It includes access card readers for all 4 buildings instead of just the Joel Elementary School. It includes some additional buzz-in systems, so we now have dual buzz-in systems, or we will by the time we're done. And it includes door alarms for even a number of doors around the perimeter of the building.
These are all capital expenditures,
They're all part of the security of
but they're all capital expenditures. There are no personnel involved here,
the,
right?
no personnel.
Okay, so the Board of Education approved it.
Yep.
They just said, spend it, right? Board of Finance has nothing to say? No.
No,
It's
because
all
it's,
capital expenditures.
but it's in their budget from this particular year right now. And they can
Not
spend
in
it.
capital, no. No,
Where
only
was it?
with the approval of the town, which is the Board of Finance, can they spend it on capital improvement. And there's no problem in expending it, as long as this board says it's okay.
They don't have to get your approval before June 30th. If the money's spent or encumbered before June 30th, they can spend every ounce of that surplus.
And would you itemize those for us?
It's capital versus
It doesn't matter,
operating.
it's their surplus, they can spend it whatever they want before June 30th. You don't have to turn the dime back.
I think that would be helpful. Good points. Okay. Steve? Any other questions? Still involves item 8.
I believe that's the end of it.
Okay. Any questions from Bob?
Yeah, thanks for that report, Bob. That was very enlightening.
Item 9, review, approve revisions to the town and Board of Education budgets. All right, so the selectmen met and they came up with a proposed list of reductions totaling $179,625 on May 10th. From capital, they reduced library bathrooms by $20,000, DPW truck by $40,000, a police vehicle and setup for $28,500 and $61,25 respectively. The interrogation room video, which we just approved a grant a few minutes ago, that was taken out, the $25,000.
We didn't approve the vehicle.
No,
Police
that's
vehicle was
not.
changed. No, Mary's saying an updated list. It was changed.
But this is the special meeting minutes.
No, it's not in the minutes. It's not. Mary changed, it was changed in the minutes. And Mary sent out an updated list.
And Brad, one thing that's not included in that was done the time before, at the board meeting right
Yeah.
after the election.
Are you referring to the?
That's not in that pot, that's nothing to do with that.
Right.
So that's what Mary sent out. It was exchanged for the Marine.
Say that again, please, I'm lost here.
Okay.
Because I remember, I was at that meeting that we're
Huh?
talking
Yeah.
Okay,
What did they change?
all right, let me,
So the Marine was $30,000
just say it
to
this way.
put it off.
When the selectmen first started the meeting, they were gonna do library bathrooms, DPW truck, police vehicle setup, interrogation room video. Then there was discussion with the police at that meeting. And during that time, and after the discussions were over, the selectmen then decided to go with $20,000 from the library bathrooms, $40,000 for the DPW bucket truck, $30,000 from the Marine motor outdrive out of CEC, and $25,000 interrogation. And they went down and said $20,000 from Social Security, $20,000 from heat and water, $20,000 from electricity, and then reduce the police operational budget by $4,625. So effectively, it's the same $179,625 that started the meeting, except that it's in
Moved around.
a little diff.
With the caveat, with the police request to switch to Marine,
Right.
that if the boat dies, the boat's dead, there's no money to fix it.
Exactly.
I don't wanna hear about it, and the other people are gonna have to answer to the Cedar Island residents and anybody else that complains.
So that was how they got to there, and then
Asset forfeiture, that's how you can fix it. There you
Rock.
go. Hard place.
Then they went on to say that after a brief discussion of the election results in Board of Health, they decided to reduce the Board of Education budget by $97,211, which is the difference between last year's budget and this year's budget. And that was their proposals, I believe, coming into here tonight.
$276,836.
279.
79,
Yeah, 279.
and then
279, 179,625, excuse me, you added in the other, right?
I think so.
97 to 11.
211, 97, 211, so, and then, so the projected mill rate with that increase.
Brad, I just want to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I did not take out the 50,000 that was done earlier, so the mill rates on those sheets are overstated by about 0.03 mils.
I'll pick that up.
I'll pick that up, and I was trying to do the report earlier tonight, but
So what is it?
Nice job, Bill. So would that be .46?
which one are you looking at?
2540.
I'd like to make a comment on the vote. I've reviewed the last 9 budget referendums. And in 2011, the Board of Education budget and the budget wasn't passed, and we had to re-vote twice on that. The same thing happened in 2010. And the numbers that I came up with was that the taxpayers were very unhappy with small Band-Aid or smaller budget adjustments on numbers that they think are large, like $30 million. At that point, the budget for the education was $31,557,007. That was in 2011. turnout in this past vote was a little bit bigger than normal. When it was rejected in 2011, it was only a 26% turnout. We had to cut $345,000 in the first vote and then an additional amount to get that budget down almost $500,000 for it to be approved by the town. I can go over the 2010 figures as well, but I'm just fearful that a $90,000 reduction in the Board of Education budget will leave a lot of people with the idea that we have not looked seriously enough at these voters and taken their vote seriously. I mean, it was almost 400 votes rejecting both budgets. With, again, 30%, which is almost our top voter turnout ever. 33% was really our top turnout ever in Trenton. That's all.
There was an adjustment to the revenue side of the budget too.
I'm sorry.
There was an adjustment to the revenue side of the budget. Previously, we had not reported as a projected revenue the money received back from the state for the circuit breaker program, which is the elderly tax relief program, not our own programs, but the one the state provides to the town. Basically what happens is the state will send you back a check for when you send in how many people qualify, were eligible, what the number was. So based on going back through the actual, what we've received from the state the last several years, and last year was $105,000, Bob and I talked today, and we bumped the revenue side up by $100,000 based on that. In theory, we know we're gonna get the money. So if you look at the, what'd you say, 290,
But can you
270?
change the revenue side of the
Yes, you
budget?
can. You can change anything at this point once the budget's been voted on.
So would that change our mill rate increase?
That's part of what Rob's projected number is right now.
Part of the 25.
Oh, that's what this new
Right.
0.4.
So
Did you re-estimate all the revenues?
we went through them all. We didn't re-estimate it because, quite frankly, most of them are based on the averages over 5 years. All the state revenues are based on the governor's budget. That's why the other day when I saw the Pequot Fund,
The pilot?
equipment, pilot payment in lieu of tax,
Change
those were
those.
government, the governor removed all of that money. Still, in bottom line is, we still have a revenue shortfall.
We still haven't passed the budget yet.
And we can't go based on, because we're in the middle of a budget, we can't wait till they're done. So we've always gone with the governor's proposal. Sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less, depends on what the legislature decides to do. And then the collection rate is another issue. It can be adjusted. Right now, these numbers are based on the 98.8, as you, Brad,
The 5-year average is 98.1.
99.3. I hesitate to go that high. We reduced it from 99.29 in 2009 because of the economy. We went to 98.5. You've slowly been creeping up to the point where we're at 98.8 now. As I said, you can go 99, maybe 99.1. I'd hesitate to go any higher than that because now always is short, but she bases it on June 30th. You have 60 days after that for the collection, and we always make the number, unfortunately for Mel.
Bob recommended 2 numbers. He did 2 calculations for us. He did a 3-year and a 5-year. He did a 3-year average and a 5-year average. Right?
No, I did, all I did was I did 98.8, 99%, 99.1, and 99.3, so you can see the
Right, I got it. You wrote it down.
That's up, the 4 of them. There was a
The latest projected bill.
Right, this is the report.
No, I didn't get that. That's my estimate, mill rate was.
Right, so the 3-year average is 99.31, and the 5-year average is 99.38.
That was the
Oh, that's no much. Right, yeah, I didn't see that.
This
You don't
was
necessarily want to be
what we had in the
Yeah,
referendum.
yeah.
I have not seen the update on
This is the one ones that you sent.
Where is that 179 figure you had, 179? No, with the board recommended, with the board selected.
Is that your tab?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
179, 625, is that the town?
About the changes, and now the word is,
Right.
there's a couple reductions here that I just was curious about. We've made a $20,000 reduction in social security. I know that's a mathematical equation, there should be an offsetting, the drop in salary.
Based on, I think it's because of the personnel audits over the years that haven't been kept up as well.
Also, overtime fluctuates.
Yeah. And we had a 39,000 projected surplus right now for this fiscal year, so we put half of that.
And part-time work and all that.
Yes.
It's kind of hard to.
How did we establish the social security number?
575.
Right.
It was based
Start
on,
less than it? What do we have?
no, it was, Kevin did it, and it was
We
based
only had
on
one
the
conversation at a time, guys.
total salaries in the budget. But some of the salaries aren't spent, people leave.
No, I said overtime changes.
And we have reduction in staff.
But that's a sizable number. And you gotta do that.
I hate to say it, we've been running a surplus in that number for a long time, and we've been trying to pull it back. If you look back at the audits in the past, or the actuals,
Are we spent, is the logic the same for these other two utility numbers?
the utility we've changed.
Utility is because we have contracts now with, for electric prices and for gas prices. So we're not spending as much as we had in the past.
Just curious, did we have those contracts when we did the original budget?
And we already reduced some of those numbers in this budget. If you look at what it was last
I
year,
mean, I'm just curious why we didn't have these numbers in the original budget.
well, remember, when we prepare the budget, we're 6 months out.
I understand.
All
I'm
right,
asking
so
you.
based on the six month,
Contracts that weren't around when this was
but you don't know how many kilowatts you're gonna use in the course of any year, how much gas you're gonna use in the course of any year, so we take an average. Based on where we're at 6 months, I actually, if you look at the proposed numbers, those numbers have come down prior to this 20,000 being taken out of those already. And based on Bob's projections, he's still saying that we're gonna have more money left. So I took basically some of that out, without taking it all. You get a real cold winter, or you get a real,
worse weather.
yeah. And I'm anticipating this building's gonna be more efficient based on our windows and our,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
If we get the air conditioning thing going right.
We'll turn some of this to turn it up.
All right. Ona,
So our mill rate increase with these recommendations of 97,000 in the aviation and 179 for the town will be 0.49, is that?
2.8.
0.28.
And actually, that's 0.25 because of the extra 50,000 cut from contingency.
So 0.25 will be the mill increase.
0.25 will be 98.8.
obviously, the obvious is that that's still taxing.
Correct, and from the look of the way the voting populace votes, it won't be digested. We'll have another third vote.
Well, there's two sides, honestly, maybe there's a third, but, one side is you substantially reduce based upon what the orders were, and you have a flat increase because all the comments that we hear from people are talking about cutting the budget. You never hear any comments about adding to the budget. So you could substantially reduce these operating budgets and have a zero increase, but we don't know what the effects of that would be on the town side. I don't know if it makes sense to go below the Board of Ed's number from last year towards MDO, based upon what we've heard. And then the other side of it is that we cut this way based upon the recommendations of the Board of Selectmen and have the public hearing and see what people say. And if people show up at the public hearing and say, cut more, then we can cut more, we have room. If they say, you're cutting too much, or leave it as is, then we reduce the number that we cut. And then you have another referendum, that's there for it. And we can keep having them right through June and July if we need to.
Sure.
You know, I mean, those are the two sides. You know,
June
take a big
23rd,
bite
December.
now and see if people show up, or take this proposal, approve it, have a public hearing, have a special meeting after the public hearing, and finalize it or not. You know, but what I would like to know, Will, is if we did roll it back to where there's no mill rate increases, what does that mean on the town side of the budget?
Well, just cut capital to zero.
Cap.
Well,
It's the easiest target.
Well,
but I
it's
mean-
easiest target, I mean, how much are we gonna do with personnel? I mean, obviously, I told the police department that the new officer is gone, if it fails again. There's no question about it. I mean, if you wanna talk about numbers, what the total would be if in fact it went to zero.
We're only talking $200,000.
No, but if you, overall cuts, all right, we're still talking about last week's number that was voted on. Between the town and the Board of Ed, you'd have to cut $756,832 to go to zero,
That's the-
okay? Based on what we've heard tonight, now we're down to another 380. On top of what we cut tonight, on top of that.
That's what we have to consider, and we have to talk about that. You can't debate something if we don't know what the consequences are on the other side. So now, this is the spot where you make your thoughts known. I mean, if you have an idea on where the cuts need to be, now's the time.
My thoughts are, just as this budget was, I thought, made clear with a nice mailing to everybody in town, very transparent. People go in that booth and vote their pocketbook. People with kids in school, it doesn't matter. I'm just looking at history here and how the history worked, and the history did not work well. I'm glad to eat my words if it passes at these numbers. I'll humbly say I was wrong. And I agree this is through the process. Take it to a public hearing, present them. There's nobody at this table that's agreeing with me, so.
Well, no, I mean, it's not that we're not agreeing with you, there's nothing, you're not saying anything to agree with, there's no substance. You're saying we should cut based on the vote, but you're not telling us where or how much. So it's hard to agree or disagree, and
Well,
it's not nasty or anything, it's just,
No,
if you have an idea of how much you wanna cut, I heard the first selectman to bring it back to no tax increase, we gotta find $700,000.
Right.
So where would you cut from? Where would you reduce the
Well, the
budget?
difference in the education budget between last year or this year, which we're presenting a budget would be equal to last year, and the MBA would be, MBR would be a $244,000 reduction, rather than $100,000. From what I'm hearing from a lot of people, that's a key number to a lot of people. So I would think that if we reduce the education budget by 244, that would pass.
We can't, can we? We can't, because that's the minimum budget requirement. I mean, we have to ask for, can we get it in 244?
That would take you.
From, when you say 244, are you
That's the number
saying the
from Jeff.
97 that the
Oh,
selectmen
that
have already
right.
said, plus another 244?
No, no.
Just
Total.
244 total.
Total, this was before the vote.
So 97 of it already, the Board of Selectmen has suggested.
244 would still leave you $516,000 to cut, to get to zero.
If you, I'm not talking about the town side, I'm just talking.
That 244 from the Board of Ed side, then you have to cut 516,000 from the town side. Yeah, 756,000 is the magic number to get to zero. When you take your revenues and your expenditures and you put them
I'm
together,
not talking about getting to zero, I'm just talking about the education budget.
a minute ago you were talking about zero.
Anything?
Yeah, I think you're right, I think we put out a number, I don't know what the number's gonna be, because I, first of all, didn't vote. Whatever number goes out there, we go to the public hearing, we hear what the public has to say, make a final decision, and go to referendum. And that's the democratic way of doing it.
Right, with the understanding that we know that there's another $500,000 that would be needed from the town side. So I mean, if you get a lot of people
If there's
showing
another
up.
failure, or
Right.
both of them fail the next time around, we have real financial problems, yes. Our cutting is gonna be horrible.
I'd like to leave the figures the way they are now, go Wednesday, get the public input at the town hearing,
We have a special meeting afterwards.
and that, yes, we have a special meeting afterwards anyways to take into effect what they say. But I would suggest that we take the cuts as they are suggested right now by the Board of Selectmen. Go Wednesday, listen to the townspeople, see what the townspeople have to say. If they say that it's not enough, if they want the town site cut drastically, then we'll take it out.
Yeah, I think that a part of the reason for the failure of this budget was based on a misrepresentation of what the surplus was. And so I think there was a lack of people who attempted to actually understand how we did apply the surplus to the budget that they were voting on. So I think, we had a meeting, and I do think that people with kids do vote with their pocketbook too. I don't know if I heard you say that they don't.
I think they do, they absolutely do.
And so, but I think, and I also think that that sign is a little unfair because we did have an estimate that we used, and it also says that we can make adjustments to the estimates. So in our charter, there is a paragraph that says that the board is allowed to make adjustments to the estimate. So I don't think it's prudent or fiscally responsible to take this entire surplus number that we're given and apply it, because we are allowed to make adjustments to that. So I think that there is a process. I think we set a number after the referendum, we did. And I think the Board of Selectmen came forward with some proposed cuts, and I think we should respect the work that they did and see the process through. And if it means a third referendum, then it means a third referendum, and I sure hope it doesn't. I hope that the communication and of what that might mean gets out there, and I hope the accurate facts are out there too. But I think that we factored in a lot of what has been suggested to us. We've talked about it, and so I think we should let it go and be prepared.
Be prepared to cut.
Yes, be prepared to cut, and look, I think after, if it fails, we should have a dollar amount in mind right away, and, yeah.
And I'd like to add to that, that if that drastic thing does happen, there'd be no sacred cows on the table.
Right. I understand.
Everybody take a hit.
Yeah.
Across the board again?
Across the board, whatever. Nobody
Again?
gets exempted from the,
The reference to across the, we had brought it
Right.
up the other night.
you can't just start picking on one or two departments all the time, like DPW, the police, anybody else. It just goes across everybody. Everybody gets hit.
Well, I think if we are going to not accept their number and hire one, we better come up with a specific example, because that's what we have to do. I haven't heard anybody give it.
I was going to, when it was my turn. Okay. You got some.
No, I have a thought in mind, if somebody has a specific, I was thinking more in terms of a general reduction in all of the budgets, obviously where possible. I think when you look at some of the town hall budgets that are 1.5 people, there's nothing really to talk about. We're talking about something that we all love dearly. Those are the ones that are unfortunately going to have to take the weight of any kind of cut that we have. I'm curious about the mathematics. I didn't think it was even a 700,000 reduction. When I see a 100,000 increase in the overall budget for the education, and a 500,000 increase in the overall town.
And then a revenue reduction.
Well, because some.
And you add the revenue reduction on top
The
of
debt
it.
service has to go up.
Right, debt service goes
Yeah.
up.
What you gotta understand, what we voted on was the spending budget, gentlemen.
Right, you got,
And that's all we're talking about now. They rejected the spending budget, which means we have to reduce spending.
But we have to reduce it by $117,000 more
Because of the
then
revenue.
what the change is, because debt service has to go up. So that's where you're.
I'm looking at the total town already included, all of that stuff.
The 5.
14.8 to 15, 15.4. 14.9 to 15.4. Okay, that's 500 grand.
500.
And that includes the increase, that includes everything above it.
Like, we're talking about what you would have to cut to get to
The
zero.
question was asking
No,
about
no,
zero
I'm not-
tax
I'm not talking
increase.
about
Oh.
tax, I'm talking about spending budget, bringing it down to a zero increase in the spending
But
budget.
you asked how we got to 700,000.
639,000.
Assuming the revenue side.
Town, 639,000 between town and board of ed. 639, 606 is the expenditure increase.
Which is what was voted down, the spending.
Correct.
Nothing else. Nothing else is voted on.
Revenues you're setting, your tax collection rate is set after the vote someday passes.
Right.
Right. Collection rate has nothing to do with it until after the vote passes. Mill rate doesn't have anything to do with it until the vote passes.
Do you have any ideas?
Well, I said this before, there's a whole bunch of town-aided organizations.
I was gonna
It
go
comes
there.
up to at least 10,000 you can take out.
I'm glad you said it, because I was a proponent of reducing them down for a
You
long
know,
time.
Thousands of
There's
dollars.
at least 10,000 you can take out there.
You know, but I mean, obviously, the easiest one is the 721 capital expenditure fund, but, you know,
I think I'd like to hear from the selectmen specifically what reductions they would take from that 721.
but they're gonna ask us for a number on Wednesday, the 22nd, like we rejected. So we're taking the opportunity now, instead of
Can I say
reeling
something?
from some kind of reaction, you know, and
No.
You've had,
dealing with,
can I just say something? You've had the input from the Board of Selectmen as to where the cuts that were mandated to us to look for, where we thought they could come from. And we looked at that and agreed. But we haven't heard your opinions. I mean, I'm sitting here
well, we
going
unanimously
over.
voted to send this budget to referendum to
We're
pass.
Right,
I know, but what-
Right,
Sorry.
and it didn't.
You guys
And
are
it
already
didn't.
way ahead of
So
us.
we're waiting to hear what your opinions are, because we're not as
It's a bad idea.
in-depth, I mean,
Cut anything.
granted, Willie knows what goes on with the checkbook on a much more intimate basis than the rest of the Board of Selectmen. But we look to the Board of Finance for that kind of guidance, because that is your task. You are the ones that have that intimate knowledge that we don't have. I mean, I'm going through the operating budget right now, and I'm just highlighting every line item that is at 50% or approximate expenditure for this year that has $2,000 or more left in their budget. And I mean, just scanning these numbers, now granted, there are a lot of them that apparently the expenditures haven't been made yet, but there's easily like $150,000 here. If you guys had that sort of discussion, and with those departments, I mean, you're perfectly entitled to bring departments into discussion, I believe. There's wiggle room in the town side at this point, according to the figures that I see in this report that's dated May 9th. But also, I would imagine that the Board of Education has wiggle room as well, that because I don't know how intimately you are aware of their budget either, but my guess is that there is more, room for, stricter financing than it appears to.
Well, that being said then, Carol, if we were to tell you, please bring the budget note, not a dime over last year's spending budget, where would you advise us to make the
Well, see,
cut?
that's not our job, that's the
You're
Board of
administering this
Finance.
budget.
Yes, no, see, I can appreciate what you're saying,
Thank
I
you.
do, but I also think that while we can look at the numbers, I think you selectmen are know what a cut would mean
Day to day
more
operations.
intimately than we would. I mean, especially, we're not paid, and I have another job up in Middletown that I go to all day. I don't have time to sit from department to department.
Well, see, that's usually what happens in February when we have those meetings,
Well,
which didn't
exactly.
happen this
No,
year.
no, they didn't.
Yeah,
They did,
yeah,
they came to
usually, I
us.
mean, I know in years past, there've been 12 or so meetings during the course of February where you do get that
They
knowledge.
came to us,
They
and I think
didn't-
that's what Brad is saying.
And you heard exactly what we heard. And we asked the general questions, but we don't get into the nitty gritty and, I don't know, it just seems like I'm waiting to hear
Well,
more.
Here's, I mean, I went around and I talked to a lot of the departments in the town hall on Thursday after the defeat. And they all told me that they're under budgeted, that they need
Well,
more
of
money.
course they're gonna look at
No, I
that.
mean,
What are they
I'm
gonna
just-
say?
I'm
Oh,
just
we
telling
were
you,
taking a
you know, I
vacation
mean,
to Florida?
We don't set policy here, okay? I mean, the Board of Selectmen set policy. So it's not fair to say that we
But oftentimes
recommended.
the pocketbook controls the policy.
Yeah. That's one philosophy, Carol, that you can legislate with the purse strings.
All I can say is, listen,
That's not what we
the
do.
town budget, the minimal increase is the biggest increase in the town budget was capital. Bottom line is, end of story, we had a big jump in capital.
And we continue to underfund the
And keep
capital.
underfunding that, and it was a big jump in capital.
You know that,
We
Carol,
had-
you saw it at the committee.
Even though our police pension, the ARC went up, I was still able to knock the general government down considerably. It's actually it's negative over last year. I mean, I can't say that.
We take into account, we debated, March was, we talked about what the revenues are going to be, we talked about the estimates. I mean, we do talk about the estimated surplus. I mean, example, $4.6 million, that's what the estimated audited surplus is right now. We're at the 10% floor. When you look at what we've spent out of our undesignated fund balance for the last 2 operating years, we're aware of it. I mean, it's over $5 million. I mean, just since June 30th, 2012, we've made $2,412,572 in appropriations. That if we didn't have surplus, I don't know where that money's coming
You
from.
had to do a special tax assessment.
You know, I mean, and you can't bond to operate your government and budget.
You clean up after a storm, or
Well, you can, but you still have to borrow it and have an emergency declaration, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, what we look at here, when we look at the fund balance being $4,700,000, $4,600,000, somewhere in there, and our minimum that we voted on at $4,601,000, we want to make sure that we keep above that for future debt service, because we all know that we're going to be issuing somewhere between $40 and $50 million in bonds in the next couple of years. And we don't even know what the wastewater treatment solution is going to cost all of us. So, do we consider it? Yes. Do we talk about it? Yes. Heatedly? Yes. I mean, the surplus, the operating surplus, it's lower than I expected it to be, and it's uncomfortable when it's lower than you expect it to be, because the opposite of a surplus is a deficit. And if we were ever to run a deficit, if we don't have it in our surplus, we have to raise it somewhere, and the easiest way for this time to raise revenues is taxes. So, you know, we're on a road to where our heads are gonna snap back, and people are gonna have strokes when they get their tax bill in a couple of years, all for the sake of saving, what's the mill rate?
2518.
5 increase.
Please.
If you don't mind,
Oh, no.
I'll bore everybody in the room for just a couple of minutes.
Please do.
I am the chairman of the Capital Expenditures Committee. And as many people have said, including myself, capital this year has been one of the largest. But I'm gonna just bore you with some of the things, and as soon as you say you don't need it, put your hand up and we'll cut it. For instance, it was very nice of the library, who's only getting $20,000 this year to do their bathrooms. They came in and offered to Willie, take my 20. So guess what the library gets this year? 0. Technology gets $65,000. This 65 is spent on server replacement schedule, printers, copiers, fax, for the entire town now. Not just for one little office, the whole town. Other systems, docks, and things of this nature, they have, as you know, cameras down at the docks, cameras over at the parks and everything. So their total technology is $65,000 as we're getting into the 21st century and trying to get our town up to date with fiber and whatever. The fire department's total capital budget is $79,000. 40 of it is to do a bay resurfacing on their fire department floors. They've been asking this now for 5-6 years. We've been canceling it 5-6 years. What happens is you go down to that firehouse, it gets condensation on that floor, it's slipperier than I don't want to have to tell you. So what they want to do is paint it with some type of a safety with grit in it, so that the firemen don't fall on the, as they're going out, Keystons, thank you, sir, going out the door. The other $24,000 is for personal protection gear. Every year, we upgrade their personal protection for the firemen, so they get better stuff. And the other $15,000 is for replacement of the supply hose. We all know what the supply hose is, the things that they pull off the trucks, fight the fire with. So, all told, to keep our fire department up to snuff, $79,000 worth of equipment. The fire marshal asked for a $35,000 car. I think people have heard me say it a couple of times, but I'll say it again for people who haven't heard it. Last year, the fire marshal went out, left his house to go on a call, got about 200 feet from the house, and the front end went out this way. Both wheels on the car went out this way. Bang, flat. No fire marshal moving there. Fortunately, at the time, the fire marshal was also the fire chief, so he used for the rest of the year the new fire chief card. He is no longer that. He is just now the fire marshal. He needs a car.
Did you say it was $35,000?
That's what he has in the budget. I don't know, you know. Their cars have all kinds of fire marshal. When he responds, it isn't like me responding to my Chevrolet. You know, he's got all kinds of stuff in it. Close. The police department. The police department, as you know, they cut their $30,000 Marine outdoor drive. We cut the $25,000 for their video room. They had in for 4 vehicles. We cut them to 2. So they got knocked down to $69,250 worth of equipment. Public Works. First thing Mr. Neff came in the other day, talked to Willie. Let me cut that used bucket truck for $40,000 out. Can't use it. But in the meantime, he has left in other pieces of apparatus and 2 things that are very vital, I would say. Roof maintenance to building 2. The roof is starting to decay. They need a new roof. And roof building maintenance, the old section, garage doors also on the older part of the building, the 13.5. So he started off at 93,000, he's down to 53,000. Now I will say that the only thing that's I personally every year ask for is what we call the infrastructure fund. Everybody else, by the way, got zeros. Harbor Commission, Elderly Housing, Water Pollution, Historic District, Shellfish Commission, Conservation Commission, all that.
Economic Development Commission.
They're all zeros. Park Rec, by the way, got their 16.5 to continue with their track renovation program, which we had set up a long time ago, plus 18,000. They do a field a year. They shut down a field, and they shut it. So, the only increase, it's been one of my pets, is what we call the infrastructure account. Now, this infrastructure account is a sizable hunk of money that Public Works can use when you don't have a bonding issue to fix roads or to do things of that nature, but somebody comes up and says, all the railings on 145 need to be fixed. Pete grabs it out of that 250. You want a little extra in front of the town hall because they put the nice stones, which was great for the veterans, but behind it was a mess, so somebody has to dig it all out, put all new plantings. You go there. Now you go down to Town Beach, and you say, okay, they just put up a nice new, snack bar and everything, did a nice job, but there's some shortcomings. Needed a railing here, need something, guess what? You call on him, so he dips into that. So that $250 is what I ask every year for $500 be placed in there, and it gets cut immediately to $350, and then the selectmen at the end do the best they can to cut it to $250. But that's the biggest expense. But that $250 goes a long way to, I can't tell you how many things along the streets. So yeah, $721,000 is a lot of money. But $721,000 covers this whole town, every single thing you can think of. This building, building next door, Academy building, you name it, and if it's a town building, something to do with the town, that's where capital goes. And that was, as Willie said, one of your biggest expenditures this year. But guess what? In the last 5 to 10 years, that thing has been cut from 1.1 million down to 1, down to 900,000, down to 800,000. Now we've cut it to 721,000.
Actually, it's
6 last
550.
year, right?
550.
6.
So you keep cutting, you keep cutting.
We don't keep faith with our plans. We try to establish plans. We haven't kept faith with them, so, you know, I mean, Carol, overall,
Man
the
did
rejection
try.
of the budget, you know, in our estimation is unreasonable, because we agreed on a budget after we debated it and prepared it and talked to the town. You know, so, I mean, if they reject it again, then the voters reject it again, and we'll go back and we'll do this exercise.
We'll do what we have to do, but it's just that, you know, you talk about everybody jumps up in the air and they send letters to the letter. Oh, hey, DPW did a great job. Oh, the snow's gone, everything's gone. Yeah. 2.5, one truck for sure went on the first or second day. Bang. Transmission went and everything. Why? Truck was 20 years old. That truck should have been replaced a long time ago.
25.
Gone. 25. Then, a couple of days later, our next big storm, a couple other trucks went. So it gets a little harder to plow all those roads. It gets a little harder to pick up all that trash after hurricanes and everything. Everybody likes all this stuff. Everybody writes letters and hey for this. I'm the biggest penny pincher in this room. Believe me. Ain't nobody likes to spend a dime. But at a certain point, we have to spend some money to keep this town the way it is. It's a damn good town. And this town is not made of buildings. It's made of its people. And I'm proud to be in this town, because when somebody gets hurt in this town, somebody's in need in this town, people come out in this town and take care of it. I wouldn't trade this town for the world.
Hear, hear.
So, as far as Ms. Fritz's comments at the beginning of the meeting with the memo that she handed out to all of us, we do fully understand the reaction of what will happen with these budgets. We get it. And, you know, Mr. Carr, we'll agree to disagree about what the definition of the noun budget is, but it's an estimate, and we do the best we can with the information that we have. So, you know, I'm willing to entertain a motion to accept the selectmen's. You want something else?
No, I just actually want to redeem myself a little bit, less people think I don't take my job seriously and don't do any work. That if anyone wants to look at my budget, I have notes all over the place. I flipped tab by tab. Now, the problem is, as soon as I start disclosing what my notes are, which I prefer not to do unless it fails again, every department's gonna get defensive. Because I do believe that every department came in with their best budget. And so, you know, to cut anybody's department is not gonna be a pleasant thing. So I have it here, and, you know, and I did a lot of work to see where I thought, you know, things could be cut. But I respect that they came to us and we all brought the best budget forward, and I didn't want to make any cuts, but they're here. Non-capital.
All right, we still love you, don't worry.
All right, so we have a budget to propose for the public hearing. And the number is 179.
number?
I have the number, what's the number?
Actually, you need the total, just
So,
town budget and board of
is it the
ed.
15,
Comes to 46,521,085.
But you need two numbers, town and board of ed. Separate.
Town is 15,221,584, and Board of Ed is 31,309,501.
Again?
15,221,584, and 31,309,501. And the total is 46,521,085.
That's 97,000 for education, correct?
97,211.
That's the 50 that the, was it Board of Selectmen did?
We did 49, they did another odd number.
Well,
The
some-
Board of Finance did 49 the night of the budget referendum.
Last Wednesday, we recommended 49.
And then the selectmen and their emergency meeting on Friday recommended an additional.
Total of 97, 211, I think it was. It's the difference
It's on
between
the,
last.
it's on the sheet, but the thing that's missing is the, I believe it was done just before the referendum, 50,000 from contingency and from, undesignated,
So these numbers don't include that additional.
Well, that's a good fight.
I get it.
Correct. 211. 211.
Oh, 211.
211.
So it's 15,221,584.
Got it.
31,309,501, for a total of 46,521,085.
And you get 46,521,085?
I mean, I'm just adding two numbers together, that's all.
Hang on,
No, I'm not getting the same number either.
Yeah. 31, okay, 531.
9711.
Dennis, you have it on that sheet I gave you. The sheet with the yellow highlights on it, the bottom of it has the town side. That's for some reason.
No, I know, that's why we're adding them up, and making sure that we're right.
What do you get? Fred, what do you get?
Allow me.
The first one I got was total 46,525, 15,215.
You got it. I'm trying to find it now. There it is right here. Got it?
You say everything.
It's 10 to
361 is the town side.
Okay, that's the added revenue.
50,000 taken up.
I have 49.
309. Really is about adding numbers.
Yes.
And the other number was
31, 309.
They got 501.
501.
That ain't gonna happen now.
31, 309.
Right.
If he wants to, I'll do it.
Final number, Fred?